Hi, welcome to my channel. I am Thomasin PA2066. Today is 13th of January 2023. I'd like to do a video recording on MEAS 3 and also MEAS 5. They are linked together. Of course, this particular presentation hopefully would make these two standards understood in light of practice. Let me begin. Hi, welcome to my channel. MEAS 3 and 5, how they are linked together. I'm Thomasin PA2066, today 13th of January 2023. Let us begin. So how do I remember the 10 standards in the Malaysian Estate Agency standard? So this I put it under three categories. ONE 1, FTA and COV-CAT, which I pronounce as COV-CAT. So it's 1 FTA COV-CAT. So how do these abbreviations help me? Because trying to remember standard 1 to 3, standard 4 to 6, and then standard 7 to 10. So 4 is actually easy 4 is fee Then 6, 4, 5, 6, 6 is advertisement. 9 should be client's account. 10 should be tenancy administration. So 1 is office, all means office. How to set up office. And N is negotiator, E is engagement types. So the first one is engagement type, and then the number 4 is fee, number 5 is terms of engagement, and number 6 is advertising, so FTA. So the situation is that what are the difference between number 3 and number 5? One is types of engagement, another one is called terms of engagement. These two can get confused. So today I would like to do a combination of these standard 3 and 5 read together. So letters of engagement in the earlier standard 2014 and before that they used the word letter of appointment. So when a negotiator or a agency firm send a agent and have a deal of agency contract with the vendor or the seller of the property, then they have this appointment or engagement. So the agency firm is engaged by the vendor to work on the property as in marketing and promotion and selling of this property. So letter of engagement, last time called letter of appointment, LE, is actually an agency contract between the seller, proprietary owner of a property, and the agency firm. So the agency firm represents this vendor, the seller, to go to promote this property to its potential prospect. So this potential prospect is third party as in the agency contract. So this letter of appointment or letter of engagement is a very important piece of legal document. It's a binding contract between the agency and the vendor. The vendor here is the owner or the seller. Although there are other words that is being used, the other terms is being used, like called authorization to sell or authorization to let, and also in the case that there is a potential prospect buyer, and then this buyer having seen your listing, still not happy with your listing, so he appoints you as an agent or agency firm. He appoints the agency firm to look for a specific or a particular property for him. So this is into the future because he has seen whatever you have in your listing or your basket of property and still not happy, and he said that I want to appoint you, I want to engage you to look for a property. So in this case, it's called authorization to secure a property for acquisition. So there is a standard word used, authorization to secure a property for acquisition or for rent. Also, interestingly, as an interest party to lease this land, it is used as to rent. Whereas when a landlord who want to let out or want to lease out the property is called to let. So from the owner side is letting out, from the tenant side is called I want to rent. So I want to rent your property. So the correct word to use is authorization to secure a property for rent. It's not to secure a property for let. So that's the difference, the specific word used in the law. So this part, the letter of engagement is actually between the agency or the agent, who is the principal of the agency firm, with the owner or the vendor, we call the vendor. So the normal scenario is the agency firm will prepare a letter of engagement and give it to the vendor to sign. So this part in the MEAS standard looks like this. So general authorization to let or exclusive authorization to let. That means a letter or a specific document given to the proprietary owner and ask the proprietary owner to go through the terms and conditions inside this appointment, and then later on sign by the registered proprietor. So the owner actually acknowledge or sign and say that yes, I am appointing you as a agency firm to represent me with the specific terms and how a payment is calculated, and later on follow through if the job is done. And this also include the scope of work, so how much of work, and also the part that given the right to do certain advertisement or promotion. So later we will see the details in the subsequent slide. So here I want to highlight to you that there is a part on the witness. So when this is signed by the proprietary owner, the vendor, and witnessed by usually the agent himself, the negotiator himself, he will sign here and give back to the agency firm. So this is kept as a proof that yes, the vendor, the owner, the proprietor of the property has given the agency the appointment, the engagement to represent this owner to sell or deal with his property. So this is a general authorization to sell, and this one on the right hand side is actually exclusive authorization to sell. So on the exclusive part, you can see more detail, whereas the general one is less detailed. Signed by the proprietary owner, the registered proprietary owner, and then witnessed by usually the negotiator. So the other one is the authorization to secure. That means appointing the agency firm to look for a property, to secure a property for acquisition, to buy or to rent. Similarly, also signed by the prospect tenant or prospect purchaser. So this prospect tenant or prospect purchaser give the agency this document to say that I am engaging you, I'm appointing you to represent me, as in agency contract represent legally, to work on a specific scope, to look for a property, and I will pay you a certain amount of professional fee and the details. So letter of offer, and in the case is actually different. The letter of offer and acceptance is actually between the parties that comes to a transaction, because the contract is on the sale and the purchase, and the transaction is the sales and the purchase, or is a tenancy agreement between the tenant and a landlord. So this governs by contract law. In Malaysia is the Contracts Act 1950. Unless we have for tenancy a new Residential Tenancy Act, RTA. Currently there is no RTA. We rely on the Contract Act 1950. So this LOA can be an agreement to purchase. There is a so-called written agreement by the purchaser saying that I am willing to purchase, and it is a legal binding contract before proceeding to signing the sales and purchase agreement or the tenancy agreement. Usually this is by the purchaser or the tenant, prospect tenant, sending it to the vendor. And a lot of time as you know, purchaser and tenant, they are not doing this all the time. They are relying on the agency company, agency firm. So this letter of offer and acceptance or the agreement to purchase usually is drafted by the agency agent and put it to the purchaser or the tenant to sign. After that, carrying this document signed by the purchaser or tenant to go back to the vendor, and the vendor be explained what are the details in the agreement letter, and then later on make signature of the vendor if the vendor accept this proposed purchasers, this particular transaction will go through lah. Of course, in the detail we will go through in a subsequent slide. So this is an example of the agreement to purchase. So agreement to purchase, in other words, is actually letter of offer and acceptance. So this is agreement to rent. So similarly, in the case of tenancy, there is also a tenancy proposal to rent, and then later on signed by the landlord to okay to rent out. So usually we do this as a letter of offer by the purchaser, and then accepted by the vendor. For the tenancy, a lot of time owner agrees is usually by verbal. So when the tenant pay the first month rental, that means pay a month rental, and this offer as a month rental is orally, verbally transmitted, told to the vendor or the landlord. In this case, the landlord agrees by accepting this particular proposal to rent, and then later on they proceed to the tenancy agreement. So if it is a residential house, usually the landlord would have a standard, his own standard tenancy agreement, and this tenancy agreement being given to the tenant to read. And if the tenant is happy and okay with the terms, then the tenant would sign on the tenancy agreement as a offer to rent. And when this tenancy agreement reaches back to the landlord accepts it by signing on the tenancy agreement. So that is a process in the on the ground practice for residential rental. Whereas for the case of sales and purchase, usually it takes time for the loan to be approved, and therefore when the proposal to come to a offer from the purchaser signs the letter of offer, and then the letter of offer will state down all the details, and this letter of offer together with the booking fee, usually about 2% of the agreed transaction price, the sale price, will be paid to the vendor, the owner of the property. And when the owner says he accepts this letter of offer, then it becomes a letter of offer and acceptance, both signed, to proceed with the loan approval to sales and purchase agreement. And when there is a sales and purchase agreement signed and stamped, then the transaction is fully recognized in law. So here you can see signed by the purchaser, because the purchaser proposed to the owner, and then accepted by the owner. Both got witness. So usually this witness is by the agent. Similarly, for tenant to propose, to offer to rent, and then accepted by the landlord, signed by the agent as a witness. This part, agreement to rent, usually bypass in the usual on the ground scenario, verbally agreed. And verbal agreement is actually a binding contract, as long as there is all the element of contract, including consideration paid. So let us continue. MEAS 3 on the types of engagement. What it is. It basically group into three. Very specifically, the first one, which is exclusive and sole. So exclusive and sole here would be linked to different way of writing out the MEAS 5 under the MEAS 5 under engagement terms, and also affecting standard 7, which is core agency. So because there's exclusive and sole, therefore there is core agency. Joint and ad hoc usually not much difference between the joint and ad hoc. Joint means there is a number of agent agency appointed, and each and every agency know that the other agency is doing the job or doing the promotion. Whereas ad hoc, there is open listing. That means nobody knows who is doing it, and everyone seems to be doing it, and whoever brings forward a deal, the first come first serve basis. Of course, depending on the vendor who will accept or not. So how this relationship between the agent and the principal is actually determined by this major 3 area of appointment, the engagement. So if it is exclusive and sole, means that the agent has all the right as exclusive to receive payment of fee, whereas joint and ad hoc, it may not be the same agent or the agent who do the job. So it can be any agent or competing agent. So means that when the agent himself brings forward a case, he is entitled to the fee, but the owner retain his own right to introduce and close the deal himself. So of course the best is exclusive, whereby the owner, although able to close the deal himself, he still need to pay the agent. So the purpose is that exclusive for the agency put in effort and marketing budget spent onto the project or the property. So it may be because by his work of promoting the property that the deal is closed, although the deal is closed indirectly by the owner himself. That means when public saw the advertisement and public actually come to know about this owner, maybe even a related person, the public who's related straight away call up the owner directly and agreed to buy. And in that scenario, the agent actually did his job. He has done the marketing effectively and resulted in the successful close. So that is exclusive. So what is in the MEAS 3 for the letter of engagement or appointment on the part of types of engagement, MEAS 3, that's actually to specify the fees, how much to be paid, and how the fees is paid. So how the fee is paid is in the case that the job is done. So when the job is done means the sales and purchase agreement is signed and become unconditional. So although there is a blur area by saying that, well, is it under MEAS 3 or is it under MEAS 5, whereby the terms of engagement in the fine print, should it be saying that, well, if let's say, take for example, I would want to pay my agent, although it is subject to state authority approval. So this type of fine print inside the engagement, is it under MEAS 3 or is it under MEAS 5? In fact, it's quite blurred. So I would interpret it as terms of engagement under MEAS 5. So although it can be seen as the requirement of MEAS 3. So if it is under how fee is paid under MEAS 3, then yes, it becomes MEAS 3, whereby the vendor agrees to pay irrespective of whether state authority approval is granted. So let us go to the so-called more detail of the MEAS 3 on types of engagement. So why is it so important about the letter of engagement? Because the letter of engagement specify which particular engagement. And therefore, if you have an exclusive engagement letter appointment and someone else actually brought the deals through, and he refuses to pay, that means the owner refuses to pay, you have this letter of engagement to say that, yes, I'm exclusively appointed, therefore you need to pay me. You can go to court to claim this particular fee paid. So this is the purpose of MEAS 3 mentioning about importance of the letter of engagement and the type of engagement. Because if you are jointly appointed or you are sole appointed, then you cannot take this letter and claim because there is no exclusivity in the position of a law to protect the agent. So I will put it as exclusive means sure paid. Sole means you have 50%, because between you and the owner. Because if you did not bring the purchaser and then the owner somehow can prove that he actually got the purchaser himself, he doesn't need to pay you. So joint and ad hoc, anybody else can claim that he has brought this particular purchaser. So for joint and ad hoc, anyone can say that he has actually engaged by the vendor, and he actually saw your prospect, and then your prospect is happy to deal with him. So it's very hard to argue that your prospect purchaser or your prospect tenant prefers to deal with the competitor agent. So in that scenario, the types of engagement in this case doesn't protect the agent, the particular scenario of competing agent trying to get deals. So what is in the letter of engagement, that is briefly we go through letter of engagement, especially the exclusive engagement would make very clearly these words called exclusively given this engagement, and therefore spell out that the owner, the vendor, has to pay the professional fee irrespective of how the process of transaction is completed. So this part we categorize it as exclusive authorization, and authorization in this case, as we saw, is more detailed compared to the general authorization to sell. So the part that I was talking about, the content of the letter of engagement would be who is a registered proprietor, and then this particular firm, who is the firm that is being engaged. So the two parties are coming to an engagement of an agency contract. So what is the subject property? What are the address or lot number, the land title, whatever. So what is the price, the rental price agreed to be promoted? So this price can be asking price, and at the time maybe after some time of promotion, the owner may change by giving you an authorization to vary the price. But the price that is listed in the engagement is the one that you should try and do. Of course, sometimes after having tried for a few months, then you go back to the owner and say that it's too high, cannot. So the owner will say, okay, I will give a discount of a certain amount, and that part you have to record down in your WhatsApp or in a written way using your appointment letter to vary the price that is agreed, or else there will be issues later saying that who simply change the price. And then of course, number 4, what type of engagement is very important. As I mentioned earlier, if it is not well defined, then it becomes a problem when a competing agent comes and cut the deal. And if it is an exclusive appointment, definitely the timing is important. So vendor give an exclusive appointment of 6 months to an exclusive agent. The exclusive agent, having worked on this heavily, would enjoy a good reward by even having a potential prospect seeing this agent, seeing this property a few times and closing the deal outside the 6 months. So the part that when it is outside the 6 months, it has to be a reasonable time. So this reasonable time varies between property or condition of the local scenario. So for example, it is a hard to sell factory, maybe a factory which costs a few million. Of course, the prospect go through a lot of potential changes and propose back to their companies, and then over a year only it is closed. So although it is beyond the 6 months, within a year, then it is obviously reasonable for the exclusive to award so-called the fee due for this particular agency, because the agency has put in a lot of effort. But of course, it is a residential property and a hot area, and the exclusivity is given for 6 months, and then the deal was closed outside of 6 months, but more than a year, let's say, after 12 months, then maybe there is a way the vendor can say that, yeah, thank you for your service, but it is beyond the time, more than 1 year has passed. So this is my work, my own effort. The owner can say it is my own effort. So what percentage fee, SST chargeable, all this should be mentioned in the letter of engagement. Of course, the agency will have to also say that, agency can deduct the professional fee from the earner's deposit collected. So this one need to be specified inside the letter of engagement. And when there is issue, like when both party or one side of the party abort the process of agreed sale, then what happened to the booking deposit or the deposit that is collected? So this means before SPA is signed, if there is any fallout, what will happen? And there is a high chance that the booking deposit be forfeited. So when the booking deposit is forfeited, how is this booking deposit being claimable by professional fee? So usually it's 50% for the booking fee collected forfeited, or the agreed professional fee, 50% of the agreed professional fee, whichever is lower. So if the booking fee is collected at a higher amount, like say 3%, but then the professional fee is agreed at 2%, then it should be half of the 2%. So half of the 2% is 1% instead of 1.5. And of course, importantly also, that the engagement letter should give the authority of the agent to market, to promote, to advertise, to go to social media or whatever way to promote. So of course, in the verbal agreed scenario whereby vendor doesn't sign the engagement letter, and the vendor says that, no, I do not want you to advertise publicly. I want you to just go and tell your own clients or tell your own ready buyers. Do not allow you to advertise. When even the owner actually verbally said it to you, then you should not openly advertise. Only when you found out that another agent has openly advertised, then you can maybe talk to the vendor and say that, you see, I saw your similar unit, similar picture being advertised by other agent. May I also advertise it? So this authority to advertise is very important. Don't simply just go and advertise property of somebody else, although he has appointed you as an agent, but he did not give you authority to advertise, and you go and simply advertise it, then it may become a dispute or a misrepresentation or a interfering of your interaction, a good image of you as an agent to the vendor. Now we move to another smaller variation, which is a variable document, which is called the letter of confirmation of sale. Sometimes there is no such a letter of confirmation of sale. A lot of time it's just agreed terms into buying a property called agreement to purchase or agreement to buy a property. So the letter of confirmation of sales usually is a piece of legal document when usually there was no letter of engagement. That means an owner engaged you as an agent. He never wanted to sign a letter of engagement. Verbally, he will give you the job to do, and then you have found him a buyer or a tenant. And now, in order to secure your agency fee, you go back and tell the owner saying that, well, I have found you a prospect, and then now you have agreed. So let's confirm it lah. Let's confirm that you are now giving me this job, confirm to deal with this prospect lah. So sort of retrospective lah. So the letter of confirmation of sale is used when usually you did not have an engagement, and then you just want to do something to protect your right to claim for your commission. So it can be sometimes a rectification whereby earlier on the vendor never really think about giving it to you to sell, and then out of coincidence you really got a prospect, and this prospect actually have all the trust in you that to deal with this vendor, and the vendor now come to a scenario that, okay lah, I did not agree, but now I agree now I agree to give it to you, so I confirm it in the letter of confirmation of sale. So this just usually do part on what is the commission, really selling which property, a subject property is the correct one, I'm the correct registered proprietary owner, and then agreed to give it to you to sell. So this is more like a letter of engagement, but in a later phase, agreement to give it to you to sell this property. So although it inside this letter of confirmation of sale, it did not mention about the purchaser. Just before the letter of offer, or just before the agreement to purchase. So this part on the terms of the engagement, whereby it spells out more details about how scope of work is carried out. So this part is very important, as it carries from the type of engagement, what are the details of things to be done, and what are the process of making payment. So terms of engagement usually in the standard 5 talks about who, what, where, and purpose. So who is the proprietary owner giving who, which agency to do what purpose, and where is the property, and what are the purpose, like for sale, for to let, or whatever property swap whatever types of equity swap. So this is specifically termed out very detailed inside the letter of engagement, as in terms job scope, what to achieve. Usually this is between the vendor and the agency firm, as well as including what the vendor tells the agency firm to look for a particular type of purchaser. So the part is that different from MEAS 3 types of engagement, which is entirely vendor and the agent. The MEAS 5 terms of engagement actually over spell or spill over overspill to or overlap to the part on what type of purchaser that the vendor would want the agent to look for. So for example, there is scenario whereby the vendor wants a purchaser who is a cash buyer, for example. So then the terms of the engagement would spell out that I want you as an agent, exclusive agent or whatever appointed agent to look for me a cash buyer, or I want to make sure I close this transaction within the next 2 months or 1 month. I want it fast without having to get a loan and approval, which is lengthy in times. And sometimes it can be exclusive. to say that I exclude those who wants to use government loan, so that I can shorten my transaction time. So it has a situation whereby terms of the engagement spells out thing which is beyond the relationship of vendor and the agency, but involving the targeted group of prospect to come forward. So let us group this MEAS 3 and MEAS 5 together, linking them together. So MEAS 3 is letter of appointment or engagement, or we put it in general term called authorization to sell or to let, or the part that you are looking for a particular property, so it becomes a authorization to secure a property for acquisition or for rent. So it's between vendor and the agent. It's actually a job, appointment engagement job. That means the agency is engaged and then being employed by a principal, or in this case a vendor, to do something. It is a job instruction. Whereas MEAS 5, which is about terms of the engagement, talks about including what types of deals that the vendor wants. I mentioned just now what types of customer or what type of purchaser or tenant that the vendor is interested in looking for. So it is beyond just the relationship of vendor and the agent. So it includes agreement to purchase. What sort of terms, like say, okay, in the normal scenario would be 3+1. So when the purchaser come forward, I want him to agree to the term that he will make a deposit of 10%, and then after that a loan, approved loan of 3+1 month. That means the 3 months to make the loan disbursement, and if extra 1 month is given, how much of 1 month is given? Is it with a interest charge or not? So all that is to be included in the terms of the engagement. So this part is MEAS 5, it's not MEAS 3. Right, so what is the content in details? I will just say here, summarize in the MEAS 5, scope of its authority. So it's firm's name, subject property, terms of engagement, and intended transaction. So the terms of engagement usually is saying, like, I want to get a potential buyer who can make cash payment, deposit how much, and then later on proceed to sales and purchase, pay how much, and then later on 3+1. Intended transaction is more for condition that I want it to be a sales, I want it to be within how many months, and sometimes some of the cases it can be a scenario, I want a particular type of customer, intended transaction to a type of customer. So what and how, what property, what purpose of the engagement, if it is to source for the property, how the engagement is done, and what sort of money transaction is to be paid. And then if ever there is a reason that fallout happens, how is it terminated? So normally in the scenario of sales and purchase is okay when the deposit of 10% is paid, but then eventually the potential prospect have a fallout, they cannot get the loan, whatever reason, then this 10% should be forfeited to the vendor. And then the booking, if let's say the booking is paid and then never proceed to SPA, then the booking will be forfeited. So if ever the vendor aborted, the vendor say I don't want to continue selling it, then there will be a compensation, usually the double of double payment. That means pay back the booking deposit, and on top of the booking deposit pay another sum to the prospect purchaser. So these are terms that to be worded inside the engagement, inside the letter of engagement, so that the potential purchaser, when it is discussed and negotiated by the agent can warn the potential buyer, purchaser, that these are the conditions that is tagged to this particular transaction. So the vendor need to make sure, in this case, the agent is fully aware how he wants the transaction to be. Now, to further highlight the MEAS 5, there is a MEAS 5.2.2.1, which says that these terms and conditions of agreed engagement can be either a written term condition from the client, or the MEAS 5.2.2.2 saying that this can be a reverse. That means not directly from the client, but given to the client so that the client confirm. So to make it easy to understand, one is that the client initiate a document, another one is that the agent prepare a document and ask the client to confirm that it is the correct terms. So in this case, a lot of time the client doesn't know how to do it. The client is just relying on the agent, and therefore the vendor doesn't do this letter, and part is that the agency firm would have a standard letter and putting all down and given to the vendor, and then the vendor confirms that yes, this is the agreed terms. So these are two ways of how you actually carry out a letter engagement. Who to sign? Now the part on who to sign first, whether it should be the purchaser to sign first or the vendor to sign first. In the contract law, when the vendor gives the job to the agent publicize the property for sale or for rent. It is the invitation to trade. So when the public, on this case the prospect, step forward and say, I want to offer, I want to buy or want to rent a house, it becomes an offer. So normally the process of offer is from the purchaser or the tenant offering to the vendor. So the vendor will accept it, and vendor can say, I don't want to accept it, or vendor will say, I will accept it under certain changes. So there is a counter offer. So whoever who offer first usually will sign the offer, and then the person who receive it and accepts it would sign later. So normally the purchaser to sign first, and then accepted signed by the vendor. Also usually witness is by the negotiator. So here we come extract of the MEAS 5 under agreement to purchase. So it's usually to the owner, because it's a purchaser giving this agreement to purchase to the owner. Description of property, purchase price, any booking fee paid, owner deposit, execution, how to execute the SPA, purchaser when hereby undertake, the purchaser agree to go and look for loan, blah blah blah, and then if there is a late payment, how much interest, condition of delivery, is it with the property attached with furniture inside, explaining the inventory inside, condition of the delivery, vacant possession. So if there is any other condition specified in this agreement to purchase, and this thing usually the purchaser won't write so purchaser won't write, so the agency firm come out with a formatted letter and then signed by the principal, cannot be signed by the negotiator, signed by the registered estate agent of the firm, given to the purchaser looking at the terms, agreed to the terms, and say, okay, I will offer this to the owner. So they'll sign, the purchaser will sign, and then the same letter given back to the owner, the vendor, then vendor sign to accept this offer. So letter of offer and acceptance is usually by the purchaser, description of property, price, whatever details, execution, what is the timeline, because time is an essence in a contract, so it has always to be a letter that you need to put down what is the time frame for proceeding to sales and purchase. Signed by the principal of the agency, as I said just now, signed by the parties to the letter of offer, signed usually by the purchaser first and then later by the vendor when he accepts it. How does the MEAS 5 interacts with the MEAS 3? So meaning to say, what is the interaction of terms of the engagement to the types of engagement? Usually when it is exclusive engagement or as the aspect of exclusive and sole engagement, then the terms and condition is that he is given, the agency is given the right to do it solely and exclusively. So when it comes to such a thing, that means other competitor agent cannot solicit. So the purchaser would have to be told this. So in that case, the terms and condition of the letter of offer and acceptance would also mention that the exclusive payment of fees to the agency. So terms and condition inside the engagement would binds the agent to exclusively carry out, and then it also binds the owner, the vendor, because the vendor will have to sign the acceptance from the offer. So you also binds to the owner that this terms and condition of transaction is done through this agency to a completion. So other agents cannot solicit for the same vendor. Similarly, only would accept the work upon the vendor given instruction, confirmation that there is an appointment engagement with the agency. So the terms and condition in this case, as I mentioned just now, if a type of engagement is linked to certain scenario that well, I want my prospect customer to be buying it cash, then it would interfere with the terms and condition also, as in appointment of the agent to look for a specific purchaser, a specific job rather than a general job. So my conclusion on MEAS 3 and 5 read together is that there are various terms and conditions in handling agency work. So it is spelled out in the letter of engagement and also the letter of offer and acceptance, or in other terms is agreement to purchase. And therefore, the types of engagement has an impact on the terms and condition of the engagement as well. So there is a standard format given in MEAS that I have gone through with you just now. Thank you very much. I have a few platform I have done. Of course, the e-learning system for board exam under estateagentexam.com, and the advertising platforms which are comparative index IPI for contract to you, as well as a findway.info for geo-linking of businesses. Thank you very much for coming to my channel.